Let me first clarify how I ended up working the night shift at a Walmart in the middle of nowhere. Most people assume it's a last resort kind of gig. Maybe you've got a messed up sleep schedule, or you're desperate for cash. For me, it was both. A perfect storm of bad luck and insomniac tendencies. I used to work days at a big-shot tech company a few towns away. Good money, great benefits, but the stress was unreal. I spent more time staring at lines of code at 3 a.m. than I did sleeping, which didn't help the panic attacks or the spiraling sense that I was always behind on deadlines. Things got worse when my mom passed away. Cancer that she never told me about until it was too late. I started missing work, missing entire weeks, and eventually the severance notice arrived in my inbox. At least they gave me a decent payout. But the severance wasn't enough to keep my overpriced studio apartment. So I moved in with a cousin who had a spare bedroom in a peeling duplex on the edge of a small town. Couldn't find a job in my field. Nobody in that part of the state wanted an ex-coder with a burnout label attached. So I tried local gigs, a hardware store, a fast food place, a gas station. But none of them panned out. I had weird luck, or maybe I was just too spaced out from lack of sleep. Broke a $1,000 glass door at the hardware store. Got robbed at the gas station on my second day. My manager told me I attracted trouble like a magnet and asked me not to come back. Finally, I noticed an ad on the local job board. Overnight stalker at Walmart, no experience needed. That was great, I thought. No details, no promises of health benefits or career advancement. But it was something, and it fit my messed up sleep schedule. I applied online and got a call back within 24 hours. Night shift starts at 10 o'clock p.m. We'll see you there. My first night was uneventful mostly. The store closed down for customers at 11, so I spent my time hauling boxes, cutting them open, and stocking shelves. The artificial lights hummed. The overhead music repeated every half hour, and the other night shift workers moved like ghosts among the aisles. The store was nearly empty, aside from the occasional customer buying random groceries in their pajamas. After a lifetime of daytime mania, working nights felt strangely calming. I met the shift lead, Carla, who showed me the break room. There was a tattered couch, a refrigerator that made ominous rattling sounds, a vending machine half filled with expired candy bars, and a yellowing poster of store policies. Carla tapped the poster with a chipped fingernail, bored eyes flicking across the text. "Read it if you want," she said, shrugging. "But trust me, you'll figure out soon enough which rules matter." For the first week, that was true. I learned to keep my head down, do my tasks, clock out at 6 in the morning, and never question the weird stuff that occasionally happened, like the lights flickering at precisely 2:37 a.m. every night, or the back stockroom door that sometimes refused to open from the inside. I chalked it up to the building's age, or the store's notoriously bad upkeep. But then, I found a second set of rules, hidden in a manila envelope taped under the breakroom table. That was the start of everything creepy and disturbing. The first page said, in shaky handwriting, "Do not ignore these rules. They're not corporate, they're for survival." Beneath the bold scrawl, I saw the list. Rule 1. Ignore any scheduled deliveries labeled the rogue order. No matter what the instructions say, do not fulfill them. They're not from Walmart, and each time you complete a step, you lose something of yourself. Rule 2. If you see a customer with no face, just nod. Don't talk, don't stare, don't try to help. They're echoes of those who suffered under the old regime. If you recognize them as a coworker who has passed or quit, do not mention it. Let them go. Rule 3. Aisle 13 does not exist. If you see a door marked 13 on a blank wall, walk away. If you open it, you'll wish you never did. Rule 4. The phantom manager may appear after midnight. He'll give you orders or threaten your job. Never follow him. Anyone who does isn't seen again. Rule 5. The self-checkout kiosks become something else after closing. Never scan your own items on them. That device is a gateway, not a register. Then a final note at the bottom read, "If you still choose to work here, God help you because management won't." I was alone in the break room when I discovered the envelope. Carla had already gone back to the floor, and the rest of the team was scattered around the store. I felt a jolt of adrenaline reading the rules. A part of me assumed it was some elaborate prank, maybe hazing for the new guy. But I couldn't shake the chill in my chest. Something about that trembling handwriting and the mention of old regime made me think twice. Were these references to Walmart's old management? An ex-manager who lost it? The mention of a phantom manager sounded like a ghost story, something employees told each other to pass time. I stuffed the pages back under the table and decided to forget about it. After all, I had shelving to do in the pet food aisle. Midway through stacking bags of dog kibble, the overhead intercom crackled. A voice, neither male nor female, just static-laced monotone, called my name. "Ryan, to the receiving area." "Ryan, come to the back." My name is Ryan, so I responded like an obedient new hire. The back receiving area was dimly lit, stacked with pallets of unsorted merchandise. I found my coworker Martin scanning boxes. He blinked at me. "Nobody called you, the intercom's busted." A half-laugh stuck in my throat. "Someone definitely called me." Martin just shrugged. "We've had weird static on the line all night." Could have been random interference. I studied his face. Martin looked tired. Everyone did on nights. I told him I'd help break down boxes. He mumbled thanks and pointed me toward a stack of sealed cardboard that towered up to the ceiling. For the next hour, nothing weird happened. Then we both noticed a large pallet with no shipping labels, no barcodes, no documentation. It was just a stack of plain cardboard boxes, each sealed with heavy black tape. No Walmart print, no brand markings. Martin cocked an eyebrow. "Do you think we messed up the sorting?" I scanned the top box with my handheld. It beeped, then flashed an error. No data found. That moment I remembered the first rule, something about a rogue order. I felt my palms grow clammy. The instructions had said, ignore any scheduled deliveries labeled the rogue order. But this pallet wasn't labeled. Could it be the same thing? Martin started cutting the tape on the top box. "Let's see what's inside." I grabbed his wrist. "Wait. Maybe just set it aside. We can ask Carla." He gave me a puzzled look. "What's your deal?" I didn't have a good explanation that wouldn't make me sound like a lunatic. So I muttered something about missorted inventory, and that we should check with a manager before opening. Martin wasn't thrilled, but he shrugged and hopped off the pallet. I scribbled a note for Carla on a sticky pad, asking about the unlabeled boxes. We left it alone for the night. But as I walked away, I could have sworn I heard the cardboard rustle, like something inside was shifting. The next night, the store felt heavier, like the air was thicker under the fluorescent glare. Carla was out sick. The usual shift manager, Toby, was preoccupied with an inventory audit in the locked office. So we had no real oversight. Martin and I stuck to our assigned areas, occasionally crossing paths in the frozen section or electronics. Around midnight, I noticed an elderly woman wandering near the cereal aisle. She moved slowly, wearing a cardigan that looked decades old, and kept touching the shelves as if she needed support. I let out a sigh. The store was closed, but sometimes older folks come in late, probably can't sleep, just browsing. So I walked over to see if she needed help. When she turned around, my blood went cold. She had no face. Where eyes, a nose, and a mouth should be, there was only smooth skin, pale and featureless. Yet somehow, she was looking right at me. I forgot how to breathe. The memory of Rule 2 flashed in my brain. If you see a customer with no face, just nod and never engage. They are simply echoes, whatever that means. The woman stepped closer, her entire visage an oval of nothingness. I forced myself to give a slight nod, then quickly looked away. My heart hammered as I tried to appear calm, continuing my task of front-facing cereal boxes, even though my fingers shook. She lingered, staying completely silent. After a minute that felt like an eternity, she shuffled off toward the bakery. I stayed absolutely still until I heard no footsteps. When I finally looked up, she was gone. I almost convinced myself I'd hallucinated. Then, at the end of the aisle, I noticed a single pale handkerchief on the floor, a crocheted pattern, the kind an elderly lady might carry. My stomach churned. I left it there. The rules said not to engage, and picking up her lost item felt like crossing a line. An hour later, while I was stacking soda crates by the register, I caught sight of a photo pinned to a corkboard near the employee entrance. It was a staff picture from 5 years ago, a group of smiling faces wearing Walmart badges. Front row center was the same elderly woman, but with an actual face, soft wrinkles, warm eyes, a kindly smile. The name tag read Mildred. Under it, a small black ribbon was pinned to the corner of the photo. She'd passed away 2 years ago, I found out later. It was from a heart attack. She used to work day shift. They never took her photo down. I stood there trembling, remembering that blank, smooth face. She had come back, an echo of herself, drifting through the aisles as if searching for something lost. I couldn't sleep after seeing Mildred's faceless apparition. I spent the daylight hours holed up in my cousin's spare room, curtains drawn, replaying the memory. I reread the manila envelope's pages before going in for my 3rd shift that week. The rule about the mysterious aisle stuck in my mind. The store does not have an aisle 13. If you see a door labeled 13 on a blank wall, walk away. I'd been in the store long enough to know we had aisles labeled from 1 to 12, then from 14 to 26. 13 was skipped, presumably because big corporations sometimes do that for superstitious reasons, like some buildings skipping the 13th floor. I never thought anything of it, but the note insisted it sometimes appears. I half expected to find it that night, the minute I clocked in. For hours, everything seemed normal. A slow trickle of customers, minimal restocking. The smell of floor wax drifting through the store. The worst I encountered was a random broken jar of pickles in aisle 7. But then at around 3 a.m., I took the trash out through the side exit. That area led into a fenced enclosure behind the store, where we kept dumpsters. As I turned to re-enter, I noticed a single door along the external wall. Painted steel, chipped corners, stenciled letters that formed the number 13. But that door was never there before. I swore it was just a blank wall. A wave of dread washed over me. The rule had been crystal clear, do not open it, so I didn't even want to approach. But as I stared, the doorknob twitched, like someone on the other side was trying to open it from within. I backed away. My shoe struck a chunk of broken concrete, and the noise echoed. The doorknob fell still. I fumbled for the inside handle, letting myself back into the store quickly. Once inside, I locked that side exit, double-checking to make sure it clicked. The hallway was empty. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear. When I passed the same spot later, the door wasn't there. Just plain cinder block and a grimy employees only sign leading to the receiving bay. No sign of 13 either. If I hadn't recognized the creeping terror in my bones, I might have dismissed it as a stress-induced vision. But I knew better now. I'd seen enough to trust the manila envelope's warnings. Carla returned this shift, apparently feeling better. I noticed she looked older than before, like she'd aged a decade in a week. Shadows under her eyes, hair streaked with gray that definitely wasn't there before her sick days. She refused to talk about it, focusing on scanning inventory tags with robotic efficiency. Around midnight, I decided to mention the unlabeled pallet in receiving. She stiffened when I brought it up. "Did you open any of the boxes?" she asked. "No, of course I didn't." "Good," she paused, biting her lip. Then she said quietly, "If you see a label that doesn't look official, just leave it. Or lock it up in the far corner. Don't try to send it back." I remembered the rule about the rogue order: never fulfill its instructions. I nodded, and Carla let the subject drop. At about 1 a.m., Toby, the store manager on nights, approached me in the electronics section. He was wearing the typical manager vest, but had this 1,000-yard stare, like he was only half present. I'd seen Toby around, but we rarely spoke. He handed me a wrinkled piece of paper. "Go to aisle 3, he said in a hollow voice. "Place all boxes labeled seasonal in cart, number 42. Then deliver them to the receiving area." He didn't blink once. His tone made my skin crawl. Something about the slow, halting way he spoke, the emptiness in his gaze. This was not normal Toby. My stomach twisted in recognition. The phantom manager may appear and give you instructions. Do not follow them. I glanced at his name tag. It read Toby, but the letters looked like they were underwater, shimmering and shifting. The paper he gave me was covered in scribbles, not real words. At first glance, it seemed like a standard restocking list, but none of the item descriptions made sense. Wax fruit, devour by dawn, toys that break themselves, candles for the new flesh. This was nonsense. I felt a chill race up my spine. He hovered there, expectant. I crumpled the paper in my hand, trying to look nonchalant. "Sure, boss," I managed. "I'll get right on it." The second I agreed, a flicker of something passed across his face. Was it triumph or hunger? Hard to say, but I recalled the rule. If the phantom manager appears and you follow his instructions, you'll never be seen again. I just agreed to do it. Panic flared in my mind. Maybe I could backtrack. Actually, hold on. Carla told me to check something else first. I lied, taking a step away. His eyes narrowed, almost glowing. "You agreed, you will complete it now." My heart hammered. I just need to confirm with Carla." He lunged forward. I jumped back, nearly knocking over a display of DVD box sets. Toby's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. It felt cold and slick, like fish scales. My mind screamed that I was hallucinating, but the pain in my wrist was real. Carla's voice suddenly cut through the tension from behind us. "Toby, let him go." He hesitated, then released me. Carla stepped in front of him, arms folded. She looked terrified but resolute. So instead, Toby, or whatever he really was, turned his glare, now facing Carla. "Management outranks shift leads," he said in that same hollow, monotone voice. Carla didn't budge. "Not tonight, you don't." For a moment, Toby's face rippled, as though the features themselves were shifting. Then he strode off, heading down the main aisle, footsteps echoing. Carla waited until he disappeared behind the racks of clothing. She motioned for me to follow her to the break room. When we got there, Carla locked the door. My wrist was throbbing, red and bruised. She ran the tap and handed me a damp paper towel. "That wasn't Toby," she said. "It's something that wears his shape on certain nights." I breathed hard, trying to steady myself. But that was Toby's face, Toby's clothes, same voice almost. She shook her head. "I've seen Toby break down boxes like a normal guy. I've seen Toby laugh at memes. But I've also seen what we just saw. Phantom manager, doppelganger, call it what you want." That's not the real Toby. It's a leftover from the old store manager they never replaced properly. She gave me a pointed look. Don't follow its instructions, Ryan. Promise me? I won't, I promise. Outside, overhead lights flickered. I almost expected Toby to burst in, but the handle remained still. We spent the rest of the shift in pairs, avoiding any single stretch of aisle for too long. Nobody saw Toby again that night. Then we got official word from day shift that Carla was acting manager on duty. For the next few weeks, Toby was apparently on a leave of absence. No explanation. Some employees gossiped that he'd snapped. Others said he quit on the spot, but I knew better. He was around in some weird form. That same night, I found an official-looking envelope in the break room, stamped with urgent delivery. My name was on it, which made no sense because corporate documents never list my name specifically. Inside, I found typed instructions for a special restocking. The items listed didn't match anything we normally carried. Jars labeled powdered memory, boxes of synthetic skin, and random nonsense about reversing the undone. Even reading it made my head buzz. The first rule from the manila envelope returned to me. The rogue order, never fulfill it. I confronted Carla, who looked at the documents and paled. We have to burn this, she said, not joking in the slightest. She pulled a lighter from her pocket, the cheap gas station kind, and we walked out the back to the dumpster. There, in the flickering glow of a security lamp, we set the paper on fire. The ashes curled in on themselves, drifting into the cold night air. I prayed that was the end of it. An hour later, at about 2 a.m., the store speaker system crackled. A voice that was definitely not Carla's or any coworkers said, "Attention, associates. The restocking guide for the rogue order is now in effect. Please proceed with your assigned tasks." Every hair on my body stood on end. My handheld scanner beeped uncontrollably, the screen glitching with unreadable text. Carla grabbed my arm. "Ignore it, come on." We sped-walked to the receiving area and found Martin standing there, staring at a pallet of boxes. Each box bore the same black tape I'd seen before. Only now, they had an official-looking slip taped on top. Rogue order, urgent. Martin swallowed nervously. "What do we do now? Don't open them," Carla instructed. "Just push them aside." She looked me dead in the eye. "We don't stock them." We moved the entire pallet into a dark corner behind the leftover Christmas decorations. Then Carla rummaged through a supply closet and pulled out a sheet of black tarp, which we used to cover them. By the time we finished, my arms felt like lead. The pallet gave off a strange heat, like it was alive. My breath came out in ragged gasps. As we layered on the tarp, I swore I heard faint voices from within the boxes, whispering my name. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, forcing myself to keep calm. We never did stock those boxes, and by the end of the shift, they were gone, vanished. No sign of forklift marks, no shipping manifest left behind. Just an empty space where they'd been. I asked Carla, and she just shook her head. "Corporate picks them up before day shift," she said, voice thick with sarcasm. Sure, of course it's corporate. We didn't talk about it after that. But I felt a piece of my sanity slip away. Each time you fulfill a step, you lose part of yourself, the rule had said. We hadn't actually stocked them, but had we done enough just by moving them? I tried to ignore the creeping emptiness in my gut. The night shift is a breeding ground for rumors. And with Toby's absence, Carla acting anxious, and the weird boxes, the rest of the crew started speculating. Some believed Toby had been fired. Others said he died. Martin overheard us discussing the rogue order and wanted more details. I told him as little as possible, just that certain deliveries weren't to be touched. He nodded, but I could see the curiosity burning in his eyes. We had a coworker named Mariah, a single mom mid-30s, working nights for the extra pay. She was friendly at first, but I noticed she kept to herself mostly. One night, she cornered me near the hardware section. "I know about the rules," she whispered, eyes darting around. "I've seen the faceless ones. I've even seen the aisle that doesn't exist." My stomach twisted. "You opened it?" She nodded, trembling. "I was looking for the bathroom." I turned a corner near the layaway storage, and there it was. A door labeled 13. I heard something on the other side. "What did you hear?" Her voice quivered. "Children, I think." Or something that sounded like children, crying and laughing at the same time. It called my name. I almost opened the door, but Carla happened to be nearby. She pulled me away. Then the door vanished. Tears welled in Mariah's eyes. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see it. I still hear them. I tried to comfort her, but my words felt hollow. She mumbled about quitting, but she needed the health insurance. I understood, and we parted ways. But I could still hear her ragged breathing as she tried to stifle sobs. The very next night, I arrived to find paramedics parked outside the store. Mariah was dead, found in the break room with her wrist slashed. At least, that was the official story. But the aftermath was too suspicious. They carted her body away quickly, and management told us she'd had a medical emergency. No mention of self-harm, no grief counseling. The store just carried on. Carla was furious. I saw her in the manager's office, yelling at someone on the phone, but the next day she wouldn't talk about it. "They're covering it up," she muttered. "They always do." And then she said something I'll never forget. "Dial 13 is cursed. It takes people, and if it doesn't get you, it'll drive you to get yourself." I felt numb. Mariah's face haunted me. The guilt that maybe I should have done more weighed on me like an anvil. The store's artificial lights seemed harsher after that. The aisles felt endless. Something in the air reeked of guilt and fear, and the faint metallic tang of blood that I could never quite place. It was a slow night, and corporate had cut hours again. Only 3 of us were scheduled: me, Carla, and Martin. When the last customers left, we locked the doors, and the overhead announcement told us we had after-hours tasks to complete. Carla gave me and Martin a pep talk in the break room. She looked pale, on the verge of collapse. "Don't do anything stupid," she told us. "Stay together if you can. You both know the rules by now." We split up to do separate tasks. Martin handled grocery while I tackled the clothing section. By 2 a.m., I wandered past the self-checkout area and saw Martin scanning something. A jolt of alarm shot through me. Rule 5. Under no circumstances should you scan personal items at the self-checkout kiosk after closing. That device is a gateway, not a register. I hurried over. Martin had a small box in hand, looked like a watch or jewelry. He was scanning it, frowning at the screen. "Martin," I hissed. "What are you doing?" He jumped. "Oh man, you scared me. I just found this watch on clearance. I wanted to buy it before someone else snags it tomorrow." "You can't do that here," I stammered. "Wait until day shift. You know the rule. No personal items after closing." He gave me a skeptical look. "Do you believe that?" "I'm not going to wait. This watch is discounted to like $5. He turned back to the kiosk. The screen's glitching though. I peeked at the kiosk monitor. It flickered with swirling shapes, like static, but occasionally forming grotesque faces that melted into each other. My stomach turned. Martin didn't seem to notice the horror show, just tapped the screen in frustration. "Stop," I grabbed the box from him. "You can't use this, trust me." But he replied, "Dude, chill. You're letting all these silly rumors get to your head." Before I could argue, the kiosk beeped, an unnatural, echoing chime that rattled the overhead lights. Suddenly, the register drawer popped open, revealing not a cash tray but a dark void. Cold air spilled out, and a stench like rotten meat hit my nostrils. Martin froze, eyes wide. We both stared at the swirling darkness. Something inside moved. It was a shifting form, reaching up like a clawed hand. Martin stumbled backward, dropping the watch. The kiosk screen glowed bright red, flickering with a single word: enter. I yanked Martin away, snapping him out of his trance. Together, we scrambled into the nearest aisle. The kiosk beeped again, louder, more insistent. We heard the mechanical voice. "Thank you for your purchase. Please take your receipt." But the voice sounded warped, guttural. We fled, hearts hammering, legs unsteady. When we came back with Carla a few minutes later, the kiosk was normal again, screen displaying the standard, closed message. The watch lay on the floor. Carla snatched it up and tossed it into a nearby trash bin. None of us said a word. Martin looked sick as he mumbled apologies. I didn't know. Carla just nodded, face grim. Well, now you do. I confronted Carla in the employee lounge, demanded answers. She was half slumped on the old couch, sipping stale coffee. Her eyes were sunken. I asked about the old regime, about why these rules existed. She let out a heavy sigh. Years ago, she began, we had a manager who tried to cut corners, accept weird shipments for extra cash, open aisles that were never meant to be opened. The store has special properties. Something about the land it's built on, maybe. Rumor has it that the developer was into bizarre rituals, or that an old cult used to gather here before it was a shopping center. All I know is, once you start messing with the store's dark corners, it messes back. She spoke of employees disappearing, shipments that came without corporate approval, and entire sections of the store warping in ways no one could explain. Corporate hushes it up. They bury the stories, reassign managers, pay off families. But some of us can't just walk away. We're stuck here, or we're too afraid to leave. Because once the store marks you, it follows you. I asked, why not burn it down or something? Carla gave a humorless laugh. Believe me, the thought crossed my mind. But it wouldn't help. The place might burn, but it'd rebuild itself. Or the entity attached to it would find a new location. It's far bigger than the store. A cold dread settled in my stomach. So we're actually trapped. She shrugged, trapped or chosen, I don't know. All we can do is follow the rules, keep the strangeness contained. Try to minimize the damage. My heart pounded. And what about Toby? The real Toby, I mean. Her jaw tightened, he got too close. The phantom manager. Maybe it took him over, or maybe Toby made a deal. I'm not sure, but the Toby you knew is gone. If you see him again, run. Martin grew distant after the fiasco with the self-checkout kiosk. He'd stare into space during breaks, only snapping out of it when I called his name repeatedly. One night, I found him reading a crumpled piece of paper in the corner of the break room. It looked suspiciously like the instructions for the rogue order. Where'd you get that? I asked. He flinched, found it in my locker. I thought you and Carla destroyed all copies. I grabbed it and scanned the text. The steps were bizarre and fragmentary. Step 1. Wipe your name from the scheduling system. Step 2. Place the black tape on aisle ends, one strip for each secret you keep. Step 3. Open the door marked 13. What the hell, Martin? This is exactly what we're not supposed to do. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I can't sleep, Ryan. I hear voices every time I close my eyes. They're telling me to open that door. His voice trembled, but behind the fear was a twisted curiosity. What if it's the only way out? What if the door has answers? We can end this. I shook my head vehemently. The rules are clear. You open that door and you will regret it. He laughed, a hollow, joyless sound. Do we even have a choice? This store is killing us. Mariah's gone, Toby's possessed, we're living in daily fear. He stood, eyes dark. I'm doing it tonight. I tried to stop him, but he pulled away, storming out of the break room. I immediately went to Carla, but she was nowhere to be found. My phone had no signal inside the store, as usual. I paced the aisles, searching for Martin, calling his name, hearing only the hum of refrigeration units and the clank of metal shelving. At around 3 a.m., I heard a scream echo from the far side of the store. I sprinted past shoes, housewares, and auto supplies, eventually arriving at the area near layaway. My blood ran cold. A door labeled 13 stood there, slightly ajar. A flickering light seeped out, tinted greenish-yellow like old neon. Martin was nowhere in sight, but I heard him calling from inside, voice warped. "Ryan, please help." I took one step forward, then froze. The handle was ice cold, and from the crack in the door drifted an overwhelming sense of wrongness, like gravity twisting inside. My knees threatened to buckle. Part of me wanted to run, call Carla. Another part felt compelled to save Martin. I braced myself, pushing the door just wide enough to peer in. A disturbing darkness greeted me, walls that rippled and bent at impossible angles. Shelves upon shelves towered upward, the products on them shifting shape as I watched. And in the center, Martin stood, arms extended, eyes rolled back, mouth open in silent agony as something intangible pulled at him. I lunged, grabbing his arm. He felt slick, as if covered in invisible oil. With all my strength, I yanked him backward, out of the swirling void. The door slammed shut behind us. Martin collapsed, breathing in ragged gasps. We'd made it out, but the door, it was gone. Only a blank wall remained. Martin's gaze was glassy. He whispered, "It's not done with me." Clearly, he was right. Because 2 nights later, Martin didn't show up. We never saw him again. His locker was empty, no resignation, no goodbye text. Carla told me corporate marked him as a voluntary separation. I just shook my head, numb. The shock of Martin's disappearance weighed heavily. I confronted Carla again, demanding we alert the authorities or something. She just gave me a haunted look. And say what? Our coworker vanished into a forbidden aisle. The cops will think we're insane. We were both on edge. That's when the next rogue order arrived, this time official as ever with a shipping manifest. Carla was in the manager's office, so I was the one who signed for it. It was a big mistake. The moment I scribbled my name, the driver, a man with oddly vacant eyes, said in a low voice, "Payment accepted." Then he quickly drove off. I unboxed the shipment alone in receiving, cursing under my breath. Each box was labeled with an inventory code that meant nothing to me. Inside, I found the creepiest items. Old porcelain dolls with shattered faces, jars of black sludge, mannequins missing limbs. My handheld beeped incessantly, telling me to stock them in aisle 13. That location didn't exist in the official system, but the device insisted. Over and over, "Please stock in aisle 13. Ignore it, I told myself, push them aside. But part of me was strangely compelled to do the opposite. My vision blurred and a voice in my head repeated, "Aisle 13, aisle 13. So I fought it, physically stepping away, clenching my fists. That's when Carla found me. "Stop," she ordered, snapping her fingers in my face. I blinked back to reality. She saw the boxes, recognized the shipping codes. "You didn't open them, did you?" I stared at the half-open lids, my face flushing with guilt. She sighed, "We'll figure something out." Help me carry them out back. We hauled the boxes behind the store, same place we'd burned the instructions last time. The air was thick with tension. Carla rummaged for her lighter, but it was missing. She cursed under her breath. Just then, the overhead lamp flickered. From the darkness stepped Toby. Was it the real Toby or the phantom? It was hard to tell. He wore a manager's vest, that same blank expression. Carla tensed. I glanced around for an escape, but Toby blocked our path. "Those are not for disposal," he said in that hollow tone, each syllable measured. "They're to be stocked in aisle 13. Carla spat on the ground over my dead body. Toby's gaze flicked to me. "That can be arranged." My heart hammered. I flashed back to the day Toby grabbed my wrist. Something was off. His eyes were all black, no whites at all. He stepped closer, and I felt a wave of nausea. Carla grabbed my arm. "We're leaving," she said, voice trembling. We tried to walk around him, but he raised one hand. The boxes began to shake violently, the black sludge jars rattling. Porcelain doll heads clacked against each other. A rancid smell filled the air, like decaying fruit. Carla and I stumbled backward, coughing. "You will fulfill the rogue order," Toby intoned. "Or you will feed it instead." Carla let out a feral growl and lunged, shoving Toby aside. His body felt unnaturally light, like an empty shell. He toppled, but instead of hitting the pavement, he vanished and just blinked out of existence while the boxes fell silent. We wasted no time. I grabbed a loose piece of rebar from the ground and pried open the jar of black sludge. The stench made me gag, but I dumped it onto the pavement, letting the foul goo seep away. We shattered the porcelain dolls, tore up the mannequins. Carla scribbled strange symbols in chalk around the debris, things I didn't recognize, but she insisted would help keep them from reforming. When it was over, I felt drained, like my soul had run a marathon. The air felt lighter, though the stench clung to our clothes. We trudged back inside, and I collapsed in the break room. Carla sat next to me, not speaking. We both knew Toby, or that thing wearing Toby's skin, would retaliate. But for now, we disobeyed the rogue order. Maybe we'd bought ourselves some time. No more illusions. The store was a war zone between normalcy and whatever darkness lurked behind these rules. Carla decided enough was enough. She confided in me a plan. We lure the phantom manager into the open, force him to show his true form, then seal that door, aisle 13, for good. Maybe it'll free Toby's spirit if he's trapped. Or at least it'll break its hold on the store. I wasn't sure how sealing aisle 13 was possible when it appeared so randomly, but Carla claimed there was a way. We just needed the right moment, like an alignment of circumstances in the store's layout. It typically appears around 3 a.m. near layaway, or near the receiving doors, she explained, chewing her lip. That's when the store's energy is at its weakest or something. We spent the next few nights gathering supplies: chalk, salt, nails, a hammer, a chain, and a heavy padlock. The plan was half witchcraft, half practical. Maybe it was crazy. Maybe we were grasping at straws, but we had nothing left to lose. We waited for the right night, one with minimal staff and no customers. That Friday, a storm rolled in, thunder shaking the windows. The store closed early, due to a power outage risk, and by midnight, we had only emergency lighting in some sections, creating pockets of darkness. Carla and I patrolled the aisles, searching for any sign of aisle 13. The building moaned under the wind. Rain slashed against the glass doors. A part of me wondered if we should just skip work. But Carla insisted, if we don't do it now, it'll never happen. At 2:55 a.m., the overhead lights near layaway began to flicker. Sure enough, a door materialized on the blank wall, 13 in chipped paint. Next to it stood Toby, face expressionless, eyes black. He beckoned us forward, mouth curving in a slight, unnatural smile. Carla raised her hand, motioning for me to stay calm. We crept closer, heartbeats pounding in unison. Toby's silhouette wavered, like a projection on smoke. He spoke in multiple voices at once, overlapping. Male, female, child, elder. You cannot deny the old ways. Open the door, accept the call. Carla steadied herself and said, "No, we seal it." She tossed me the chain. With trembling hands, I approached the door, wrapping the links around its handle. Toby hissed, stepping forward. Carla flung a handful of salt in his face. He recoiled, letting out an unearthly shriek. The emergency lights flickered again, shadows dancing on the walls. I jammed the padlock through the links, snapping it shut with a clang that echoed. Then Carla knelt, drawing symbols along the threshold. Toby reared back, but as soon as her chalk touched the tile, his form began to shimmer, unraveling like loose threads in the wind. No, the air distorted around him. I felt a force pushing against me, threatening to fling me away from the door. My legs wobbled, knees buckling. Carla gritted her teeth, continuing to draw. Toby twisted, features warping grotesquely, mouth stretching wide in an endless scream. A swirl of black mist poured out of him, forming shapes that clawed at us. Then suddenly, Toby collapsed, chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. The black swirl dissipated into the flickering overhead lights. The padlock clanked softly, chain rattling against the sealed door. Carla and I exhaled shaky breaths. She knelt by Toby, checking his pulse. He groaned, eyelids fluttering. For a fraction of a second, I dared to hope the real Toby was back. But when he opened his eyes, they were still black, no whites at all. He stared at Carla with raw hatred, grabbing her arm. Before she could pull away, he hissed, "I'll be back." Then he disintegrated into a swirl of shadow, gone in an instant. I helped Carla up, heart roaring in my ears. The door to aisle 13 remained locked, the chain rattling once more before going still. I touched it gingerly. It was solid, but in that moment, I sensed something behind it still existed, a corridor of nightmares, waiting. We slumped against the wall, exhaustion hitting like a truck. For a few nights, the store felt almost normal. The overhead music loop was just annoying instead of haunting. The lights stayed on without flickering. The shipments arrived with proper labels. The door labeled 13 never appeared. Carla and I avoided talking about Toby, or the twisted things we'd seen. We both pretended maybe it was over. Yet I noticed each morning as I left, the front doors seemed to watch me. The faceless customers no longer wandered the aisles, at least not while I was there. But some nights, I glimpsed silhouettes at the edges of my vision. The final rule repeated in my head like a mantra. Never scan personal items at the self-checkout after closing. I remembered Martin's vacant eyes, Mariah's death, the subtle sense of dread that never fully left. Carla was anxious. She told me she had nightmares about the padlocked door rattling, about Toby's voice calling from behind it. But the door never manifested again. Maybe we did seal it. Maybe the store's dark corners retreated. Or maybe it was just regrouping. After that calmer week, I began to think about leaving for good. I had some savings, maybe enough to move out of state, start fresh. I confided in Carla, and she encouraged it. "Get out if you can," she said, face grim. "But remember, once you're marked, it's not guaranteed the store won't follow you." I almost laughed, but there was no real humor. The idea that a Walmart's cosmic horror could chase me across the country seemed insane. Yet everything about this place was insane. But then, 2 nights before I planned to quit, a new manager arrived, Lucinda. Corporate apparently hired her to replace Toby. She was a tall woman, mid-40s, with impeccable posture and a bright smile. The staff found her polite, but her eyes were unnerving, like she was scanning you for weakness. On her first night, she asked me to join her in the manager's office. I walked in apprehensively. The overhead light was dim, the entire room reeking of stale coffee. She gestured for me to sit, hands folded on the desk. "Ryan, right?" she said, scanning her computer. "I see you've been working nights here for a while." I swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." Her smile never reached her eyes. "I'm trying to piece together the unusual records from the last few weeks. Several deliveries unaccounted for, accidents that aren't documented. Are you aware of any wrongdoing?" I fought to keep my expression neutral. "No wrongdoing, just confusion sometimes. Inventory can be weird." She leaned forward. "I know about the sealed door, the manila envelope, the rogue orders, all of it. Corporate keeps files on incidents like these." Her tone sharpened. "It's your duty to follow through on company policy, Mr. Green. If you see anything unusual, bring it to me." Immediately, a wave of nausea rolled through me, of course. She leaned back, her smile returning, but it felt predatory. "We want to keep everything under control, yes." I nodded numbly. Then on my way out, I saw Carla standing near the office, eyeing Lucinda with a mixture of rage and fear. Once we were alone, Carla whispered, "She's from corporate." "She's not here to help." I rubbed my temples. Great. Lucinda wasted no time making changes. She reorganized the break room, posted new bulletins about safety procedures, and scheduled mandatory staff meetings at 2:00 a.m. She seemed fixated on controlling every aspect of the night shift. The rules from the manila envelope were still in my locker, but the vibe in the store changed. Lucinda's presence was heavy. Around 3 a.m., the overhead lights dimmed for a few seconds. When they came back, Lucinda was standing in the center aisle, watching Carla and me. Her face was unreadable. I felt an irrational fear that she'd found the locked door and was about to blow it open, unleashing everything we'd contained. She called out cheerily, "Is the stocking going well?" Carla nodded stiffly. "It sure is." Lucinda's gaze lingered on me. "Excellent, let's keep up the good work." I forced a polite smile. Once she turned away, I exchanged a look with Carla. We both knew this was far from over. Something told me Lucinda wasn't just a corporate stooge. She knew about the store's secrets and intended to harness them. Or worse. That night, Carla and I decided to do a final patrol together, verifying none of the bizarre anomalies had resurfaced. The store was quiet. We passed the locked manager's office, Lucinda's domain, and I noticed a faint hum from inside, like a machine running. Carla pressed her ear to the door. "What is that?" I had no clue, so we crept on, turning a corner into the back corridor near receiving. The overhead bulb flickered. There, we found the pallet of black-taped boxes again, the same ones we'd destroyed. My blood turned to ice. Carla let out a choked sound. "This can't be real." I stepped closer. Each box was pristine, sealed as if brand new. A label on top read, "Fulfill the Rogue Order." Underneath, in bold text, authorized by manager Lucinda Reyes. My hands shook. We yanked the tarp off. Dozens of items glinted in the dim light. Porcelain dolls, mannequins, sludge jars. Carla inhaled sharply, rummaging through them. She found an invoice stamped with corporate's insignia. Lines of text scrolled across it. Stock in restricted aisles. Do not question the instructions. Payment will be made in full. We realized then that Lucinda was in league with the store's darkness. She was continuing Toby's twisted legacy. Maybe Toby was just a puppet, and Lucinda was part of a bigger network inside corporate. The old regime might still be alive, using Walmart as a conduit for unspeakable horrors. We stormed back to the manager's office, determined to confront Lucinda. The door was locked, that steady hum persisting behind it. Carla banged on the metal, yelling for Lucinda to open up. But there was no response. My adrenaline spiked, and I kicked the door near the handle. It gave way after 2 attempts. Inside, the lights were low, except for a desk lamp shining on an open ledger filled with symbols. Candles lined the walls, candles in a Walmart manager's office. And in the corner, a self-checkout kiosk smaller than usual, wires trailing. Lucinda stood before it, her back to us. When she turned around, I saw her eyes were solid black, just like Toby's. My stomach lurched as she gave a mirthless grin. "You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you?" Carla moved to speak, but Lucinda flicked her wrist. An invisible force hurled Carla against the wall. She cried out, sliding down, head lolling. Anger flared in me. I grabbed a metal stapler from the desk and hurled it at Lucinda. She dodged effortlessly, advancing on me. The kiosk beeped. That same horrifying beep from the night. Martin tried to scan the watch. Lucinda pressed a button, and the screen glowed red. The swirling dark void returned, tendrils reaching outward. "Place the items on the scanner," Lucinda commanded, voice echoing with layered tones. "Fulfill the order or watch your friend die." I hesitated, glancing at Carla. She was conscious but dazed, pinned by an unseen force. Blood trickled from her temple. "Don't," she croaked. "Please don't do it." Lucinda let out a chilling laugh. "Oh, Ryan, you and Carla sealed that door, but you'll open another." "You always do. The store demands it. The entity demands it." She grabbed my wrist, trying to force my hand over the kiosk. Pain shot up my arm, and I realized she wanted me to scan the items from the pallet, complete the final ritual of the rogue order, open the gateway further. Each item would probably feed that malevolent presence. I mustered every ounce of will. I twisted free, smashing my fist into the kiosk screen. It cracked, sparks flying. Lucinda screeched, backhanding me across the face. I tasted blood, reeling backward. The kiosk flickered, power cables sparking. Smoke rose from the console. Carla, regaining some strength, stood unsteadily. She grabbed the candle on the nearest shelf and hurled hot wax at Lucinda's face. Lucinda screamed, momentarily blinded. The force pinning Carla lifted. We stumbled toward each other, then lunged for the kiosk again. With a combined effort, we tore the wiring out, yanking cords free until the device powered down completely. Lucinda staggered, clawing at the melted wax on her cheek. You fools," she spat. A black swirl emanated from her mouth, rising like a living shadow. It took shape, forming a monstrous silhouette behind her. For a heartbeat, it reminded me of Toby's final moments, some ancient entity using a human body as a mask. Carla pulled me toward the door. "We have to go now." By now, Lucinda's transformation was complete. A hairless, impossibly tall figure, its pale skin covered in twisting, rune-like markings, roared, smashing its elongated arms through the manager's desk. Running for our lives, as we tumbled into the hallway, Carla slammed the door behind us. A loud crash followed, then silence. We didn't wait around to see what emerged. We burst into the main store area. Emergency lights flickered over toppled shelves and scattered merchandise. Far ahead, we saw the front glass doors, our only exit. Behind us, that unearthly howling grew louder. I risked a glance back. Shadows stretched along the aisles, twisting into unnatural shapes. My breath came in ragged gasps. Carla was limping, blood staining the left leg of her jeans. We raced for the exit. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the store in a strobe of blue-white. The automatic doors stuttered, but opened enough for us to squeeze through. We stumbled into the parking lot, blinking against the downpour. Alarms blared from somewhere behind us. That's when I realized we weren't safe yet. The entire lot was empty, no cars, no sign of life. But the store's lights glowed behind us, revealing a pallid, humanoid shape pressed against the glass from inside, its limbs horribly elongated, as if stretching to break free. I heard a muffled roar. Carla grabbed my hand. "Ryan, we have to keep going." We sprinted across the lot. My heart pounded so loud, I barely heard the thunder. Every muscle ached, but we didn't dare slow. Finally, we reached Carla's car, an old beat-up sedan. She fumbled the keys, hands shaking, and jammed one into the lock. We climbed in, slamming doors. The engine coughed, but started on the second try. Headlights cut through sheets of rain. I glanced at the store's main entrance. The glass doors exploded outward in a shower of shards. That hairless creature slithered onto the pavement as though its flesh were coated in dripping ink, its spindly arms contorting. My throat clenched. Carla slammed on the gas. The tires squealed, water splashing. We tore out of the parking lot, windscreen wipers flailing. In the rearview mirror, I saw that grotesque figure creeping across the asphalt, as if testing its boundaries. It pulsed, then receded toward the store. For a moment, relief flooded me. We escaped. But then I felt it. A tug deep inside my chest, a sensation that we were still tethered to that place. Carla must have felt it too, because she stared straight ahead, tears mixing with rain dripping from her hair. She whispered, "It's not over." The car sped down the highway, headlights piercing the darkness. Lightning lit up the sky, and every flash revealed something new behind us. On the road, in the sky, maybe just in my imagination. But I couldn't shake the feeling of an unseen presence keeping pace, overshadowing us. Carla and I didn't speak. Our minds reeled with the same question. Had we truly locked away the store's horrors, or had we unleashed something far worse? The old regime, the new manager, the door labeled 13, the self-checkout gateway. Everything formed a puzzle that felt unsolved. In the distance, as we sped away, red taillights blinked from a solitary truck parked on the shoulder. My eyes widened in recognition. It was the same unmarked delivery truck I'd seen from time to time, the one that dropped off the rogue order shipments. Even from a quarter-mile away, I could feel its presence like a magnet. Carla slowed, uncertain whether to pass or turn back. The storm hammered the windshield, thunder shaking our bones. We drew closer to the truck, and I saw a figure standing by the open cargo door. Rain drenched them, but they didn't seem to notice. Their face turned toward us, features hidden by shadow. My pulse spiked as I recognized that posture. It was my old colleague, Martin. There was no way. Martin disappeared, or was absorbed by the store, or something. Yet there he was, standing in the rain, next to the truck that haunted our nights. A lifeless smile twitched on his lips as he lifted a hand in greeting. The cargo hold behind him glowed faintly, like the swirling red screen of the possessed self-checkout kiosk. Carla slammed the brakes, tires skidding on wet pavement. We sat there, panting, not sure if we should drive by or turn around. Martin, if it was truly Martin, gestured for us to come closer. My gut screamed trap, but my heart hammered with a desperate flicker of hope. If Martin was alive, could we save him? Then, as Carla's foot hovered over the accelerator, the truck's cargo door slammed shut. Lightning flashed, illuminating the figure's face for one stark second. Smooth skin, empty where eyes, nose, mouth should be. A faceless echo, raising an arm in silent command. The same terror I felt with Mildred's faceless form shot through me tenfold. The storm howled, and the truck's headlights blinked out. Darkness swallowed the highway. Carla gripped the wheel, knuckles white, tears streaming. My breath caught in my throat. We were stranded between the monstrous store behind us and this impossible apparition ahead. Something clenched in my chest, an overwhelming certainty that we'd only begun to glimpse the entity's full scope. Aisle 13 might be closed, but countless other doors remained, waiting to open in the dead of night. Lightning split the sky again, revealing the faceless figure inches from our hood, hand pressed against the glass. Carla screamed, and I reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Outside, the figure's blank visage stared into the car, unseeing, unstoppable. And then, a surge of blackness engulfed the world, accompanied by a deafening roar. The windscreen shattered under impossible pressure. Rain and darkness flooded in. My last thought was of the rules pinned in my locker, the ones I hadn't memorized nearly enough. The night swallowed our screams. That was when I realized we were never truly off the clock. That's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed the video, subscribing to my channel would help me out more than you can imagine. I appreciate you, and I'll see you soon.